Well, introducing to all of you from the late 1950s, early 1960s, Carol Johnson's Husqvarna Viking Model 2000, part of the Colormatic family. And you'll learn as we kind of go through this premiere why it's called a machine that's from the Colormatic family. Oh, I didn't even notice. Your Majesty, I'm glad you could make it, sir. Yes, this is one of yours. From the late 1950s, early 1960s, a Husqvarna Viking Model 2000. Yeah, I know you already knew that, sir. I'm just saying it for our viewers. So, I mean, you were at the inception of this, so why wouldn't you know it? Okay, so let's go ahead and launch into some sew-offs. But first of all, I'll just walk you around the front of this machine a little bit so you can kind of get familiar with these knobs that we have. First of all, we'll get onto the Royal Crest, made in Sweden, of course. The little button right above it you can see there is to drop the feed dogs, and you simply push it in or pull it out if you want them up or down. Down here on the bottom we have our stitch width. It's a little bit tricky on this machine because usually the stitch width is going to be on top for a number of the Husqvarna Viking machines. But on this Model 2000, it's going to be on the bottom. And where you can see that little rainbow setting right there is where we're going to be pretty much all the time, because that is our preset for cam functions. And then you have a range of stitch widths that you can select depending on other stitch outputs you're trying to do. If we come up a little bit, we're in the stitch length range right there. That's to control our stitch length. And you can see there's a number of Colormatic color codings. You can see on the right there the green, the red, and there's a variety of other ones that as we go through Cam B that happens to be in the machine right now, we're going to be selecting those settings or near those settings depending on how we want that material to move. And then obviously right in the middle we've got our button for sewing in reverse, which when Carol brought this machine to me, that's all the machine would do was sew in reverse, because it was stuck there. No more. We're able to sew forward. Who knew? Kind of cool. And then over here we've got our stitch selector, where we're going to be choosing a number of different preset cam colors to correspond with cam B that's in the machine right now. And if you want to take a closer look at cam B, there it is right there. So we've got that green stitch that we're going to sew first, then we're going to do the red, then we're going to do the yellow, then we're going to do blue. And the other thing I'll show you is that Cam A are these stitch settings. And I've gotten a number of questions recently about how do I know if I have the right cam in relation to my Colormatic sewing machine within the Husqvarna family. Well, the stitches on the cam are going to match what you see here on the screen. Let me show you what I mean. I'll come out on this shot a little bit. I'm going to lock this in place. Come in just a little bit. So the cam that Carol has with her machine right now is this one. Where am I? And if you look at the cam output stitches on this cam and then compare it to this, you're going to notice that they don't match. See how for example, in the first position on cam A, we're good to go. It shows a blind hem stitch, and we've got a blind hem stitch. But it goes south when we end up getting over to the next stitch output, which is the red one, where we should have almost like, I'll just say kind of an offset mountain heart looking thingy. And on Carol's cam, we have no option at all for red, but it's cam A. It's for another Colormatic machine. And again, you can use other cams in most cases in other Colormatic machines, but instead of getting this output, you're going to get whatever is in that particular position on the cam as that finger is going across the cam bumps, the bumpy bumps. See that? So it's not going to match. And the same thing is true when we get to position 3, where we should have this really funky yellow stitch, and instead we've got this here. We've got this here in lieu of it. And the same thing with the blue stitch, where we should be getting this really pretty kind of a blue floral type output, and instead we're getting this on the cam that Carol has. Now I have a surprise for Carol. Shh! I have the correct cam that she needs for her machine. And it looks like this. And it's just possible that I might pull a quick switch on her and give her this cam that is the correct cam for her machine instead of the one that she has. You never know, right? Anything can happen on this channel, right folks? Anything can happen on this channel. Even opening up with a really cool piece by, Bill, am I correct? By Mozart? Mozart's the one that came up with that one? I believe so. So again, we're going to be focusing on cam B for this premiere. It might go to some of the other cams, you never know. So there's cam B, and as we match it, let's say we're going to do that first stitch right there, the green one, we've got to set all of our little knobs to green. We're good to go there. Here we're offset just a little bit on the stitch length because these fine tuners on here, if you go right center mass on the green red, they sometimes are dialed down so far that the material is barely moving. So I moved it over to 0.5 just so I can get a little bit more locomotion off the starting point to get that one moving. And then again, down here on stitch width, we're pretty much going to be stuck there the whole premiere, because that's our preset rainbow setting for all of the different cam output features. Okay? Did I miss anything? I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered the ground. Yeah, feed dog, stitch width, stitch length, reverse, stitch settings. I think that's what it says in the book, stitch settings. Basically stitch output. And a needle! Hey, you even have a needle? This is a top-notch operation, folks. We are always going to have a needle, I hope. Although I'll tell you one thing, when you go out to the different sewing venues, those doggone quilters are just scarfing up all the needles. You almost have to buy needles online now to even be able to sew. What the heck? Blah, 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 blah. All right. So let's do this. Yes, I have my screen pointed the right way. Let's start on this first stitch that's on cam B. And I will not play any music at all, so you can listen to Carol's machine run, and may I point out, also run forward, not just in reverse. Again, this machine was stuck in reverse. It was just really a filthy machine, and I had to replace a couple of parts as well to address the reverse issue. And then we also had a cracked cam stack as well, which you may have seen in the Facebook posts I repaired, was able to salvage it. Yay! All right. Yes. Okay. So let's try this first stitch on cam B and see what we get. And don't throw a fit, okay? Here we go. and stop. Ah, actually landed with the needle up. That doesn't always happen, folks. It probably very seldom happens for me. All right, we're going to look at all these once we go through them, okay? I'm not going to stop each time. You're just going to have to wait. You're just going to have to wait and be patient. Patient. Okay? Okay, so what we're doing now is we want to do the next stitch, which happens to be a red stitch on the Colormatic screen, the magic screen. So if I come out of my shot a little bit, kind of like right about there. Is that pretty good? I think so. Okay. So if we want to do the red stitch, we now have to move our stitch selector from green, purple over to red. And you're always going to be turning the stitch selector to the right, clockwise. Don't try cranking it the other way. You can actually break it. So we're set on red for the next stitch. This one is also set on red over here. I'm just going to shorten it just a hair. And then, so this again is our stitch length. We're good to go there. Our stitch width is already on that rainbow setting, so we're good to go there. And now we are going to go back over to the needle and see what we get. Focus. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here we go on our next stitch on cam B. Ah, see what I mean? I ended up in the down position. Ah. Okay. So that is position 2, the red stitch. Get our material back underneath there. And now we're going to do our next setting, which is supposed to be a yellow stitch. So now we're going to have to change our stitch selector. And we're actually going to zoom in on it this time a little bit. So this is what we've done so far. We've done the green one, we've done the red one, now we're going to do the yellow one and then the blue one. So now we need to move our stitch selector from red over to yellow, which is just one click away. And obviously always make sure that your needle is clear of the material when you're making changes to any of the stitch selector functions. Now we're looking over at stitch width, and you can see right now we're kind of offset on green red. That's not going to work because we need to get it in the yellow region, right? So now we're going to come all the way, actually we're going to come all the way this way to our yellow blue setting. And again, our stitch width on the bottom is already set on the rainbow setting. So we should be good to go. That hasn't changed at all. Okay, so now we're going to see if we get something that resembles that on cam B, the yellow one. Okay, so follow me down to the needle. And I've got to put on a little bit of music, folks. I really do. I can't help myself. It's so daggone quiet in the workshop. I can hear the King of Sweden whistling, and it's really distracting me. It's totally throwing my game off. Okay, so let's throw on one of my favorites, and I think one of yours as well. It's called Wedding Invitation, and I'm going to have to turn the volume way down. Oh, that's so pretty. All right, so let's see what we get now. Can be our third stitch option, a yellow stitch. Here we go. Ah, I was so close. I'm not even all the way down, but I'm still stuck in the material. Oh, I missed it by like a microsecond. By a microsecond. All right, let's get this back into position. And we have one more stitch that we can choose off of Cam B. So we're going to go ahead and choose that one. It's a blue stitch. And perfectly timed with the wedding invitation coming to an end. So we move over to our stitch selector. I'm just going to go like this because you know why? We're not going to do anything with the stitch width on the bottom, only the stitch length knob on the right there, and then the stitch selector on the left. So now we need to choose a blue stitch, which is the final stitch on Cam B. So we're going to turn our stitch selector from yellow to blue, and again, make sure your needle is obviously clear of the material. We don't have to do a thing with our stitch width because it's already set on blue. See that? Blue, yellow. And again, our stitch our stitch length. Our stitch length is already set on blue, yellow, and our stitch width is still set in the rainbow setting, so we're good to go down there. So let's go ahead and see if we can generate that cool blue stitch. This is a favorite of mine. Let me show you what it looks like up close and personal, and I think you'll know why it's my favorite. See that on the far right? It almost looks like an S, like for Scott, doesn't it? Use your imagination. So let's call this, it's probably got an official name, I'm sure it does, but let's just call it the Scott stitch, okay? All right, so let's go down to the material, and we will sew the Scott stitch on Carol Johnson's very cool Husqvarna Viking Model 2000 from the end of the 1950s into the 1960s. A lot of sources will say the 1960s, but I know for a fact that the Husqvarna Viking Model 2000 was on the scene a little bit earlier than that. There's always that delay factor in getting machines from production to the marketplace. So I'm sticking with it. So here we go, our final stitch on Cam B, a very cool Scott stitch. Here we go. I was hoping it would last longer. It was too quick. It was a little too quick, wasn't it? Well, nothing good lasts forever, does it? Not even our premieres. Our premieres always come to an end and you're like, doggone it. I think Cece said it the last time. She said, it's kind of melancholy. You know, it kind of mixed emotions. It kind of makes me sad when the premiere is coming to an end. What a sweet thing to say. So we've done all of our magic on Cam B. And now we have a chance to look at those stitches, which we're going to do right now. Yeah, it's probably not as easy to see it, especially with my stretchy material. Let me come out like this. Yeah, that's still not exactly right, is it? Because this stuff kind of just stretches. Let me see if I can stretch it out a little bit, my rubber stuff here, and see if that makes it easier to see these stitches. Or I could just take the material out, couldn't I? We're doing all this scientific calculating and just like, Scott, just take the material out. Just take the material out, buddy. Okay. All right. If you want to do it the easy way, show off. Like I said, you guys are so doggone smart. And I'm hoping my fan doesn't blow this stuff over because it's... See how it's wiggling? Look at this stuff. All right. I'm going to use the clips. Give it a little bit of stability. Hoping that'll help. It might help. It might not. Come on. There we go. We got it kind of tucked in there now. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I hope. Okay, so the first stitch we did is the one on top. And I could probably shorten that up even more to make it even tighter in there. But there lies the subjectivity when you're doing stitch output with cams, is you can kind of tweak it a little bit and make it look the way you want to make it look. And then the second stitch we did is just below it. Excuse me. And we have the third stitch. And last but not least, the Scott stitch. Hey! So if we come out a little bit on the shot, you can really look at them in their totality. Again, this is Cam B on Carol Johnson's Husqvarna Viking model 2000. Some real good looking stitches. And again, if you sew it on a material with a stiffener on the back, your definition of the stitches is going to be even clearer. This stuff that I'm using again, and I showed you a couple times already, but let me really show you. Okay? This is like a rubbery material. I'll show you down here, it's probably easier. You see how far that stretches? I mean, it's almost like sewing an inner tube. And it's musical. Listen real careful. But at any rate, this stuff, I'm goofing off as usual. But obviously this stuff is just a wee bit tricky when it comes to maintaining stitch definition. And yet, Carol Johnson's Model 2000 did an absolute spectacular job in generating beautiful stitches from Cam B. Still dealing with this super stretchy, crazy rubbery material that I happen to choose to do these sew-offs. Okay, so let me do this. My needle's clear of the material. Let me... What I'm doing, folks, is I'm knocking the king over. Sorry about that, Your Majesty. I'm going to go ahead and remove Cam B from the back and move the king before I end up knocking him over completely. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put my Cam A into the machine. When you're removing cams from the Husqvarna Viking Model 2000, you're going to want to turn that stitch selector. Let me show you again which one the stitch selector is. It's that upper left one. You're going to want to turn this stitch selector all the way to this position right here. Why do I say that? And by the way, if you're not sure where that is, that's as far as you can go clockwise. because that cam stack is going to be furthest extended out to the rear of the machine then, and you're able to more easily grip that cam and pull it straight out. People have cracked cam stacks even from taking that cam when it's in the rear of the machine. I can't see what you're seeing. Hold on a second. There we go. People have cracked cam stacks because they're trying to get that cam out as it's stuck in with those little feet that mount into the cam stack. And they're twisting it and they're turning it. And that's plastic, folks. Plastic here and plastic cam stack on the inside. You want to grip it and pull it straight out. These little feet do nothing more than snap into the little holes that are part of that cam stack. There's no locking position. There's nothing of that going on. So it snaps all the way in, and when you remove it, you want to pull it straight out. And the easiest way to do that is to have that cam stack fully extended to its position so that it's pushing that cam the furthest out so you can get the best grip on it. Does that make sense? So none of this twisting stuff, none of this jostling stuff to try to get the cam out of the cam stack. You want to extend that cam stack all the way out by turning your stitch selector knob all the way clockwise. And then you want to pull that cam straight out. Pull it straight out. Don't twist it, don't turn it, don't wiggle it, don't jiggle it. Just pull it straight out, okay? And the same thing when inserting it, you want to stick it into that cam well and just gently turn it until you can feel that you've gotten into that position. Did you hear it snap in? Be real kind to your cam stack, folks. Be real kind to your cams as well. They're all plastic, and it's easy to damage them. Okay? So what we're going to try to do now, hopefully, is we're going to sew what you actually see on screen right there. Now again, with we're looking at the first position there, cam A. With Carol's cam A, we're not going to get that stuff, because her cam A, where is it? What did I do with Carol's cam A? I don't know what I did with Carol's cam A. Well, it's somewhere around here. Maybe I already switched it out. I probably did. I'm getting behind and ahead of myself at the same time. At any rate, Carol's cam A is obviously very different. Matter of fact, I'll grab it real quick. I've got a couple of those cam A's. But I only have one of the cam A's that is the correct one for Carol's machine. Where are we looking up there? Okay. So this is what we want, right? Now we're going to get that from my cam A. But this is Carol's cam A. And you notice it's different. I showed you this already, but I'm showing you again just for emphasis. So if you happen to go on eBay, Etsy, Bonanza, one of the other places, and someone says, I got some cams for your model 2000 that are just going to be sweeter than sugar. And you're like, well, show me pictures of what the cam output is going to be so I can compare it to my machine. And you never hear from them again. So be real careful when you're buying cams or when you're buying a machine and they say the full set of cams is coming with the machine. Well, again, the cams might work in your machine, but they're not going to match your settings on your machine. Okay? Give me just a second here, folks. Just a second here. The only problem with my cam A is it only has one little foot on it. And gumdrops. Well, I'll tell you what. I am not going to use my cam A in Carol's machine because it's not seating in that cam stack that I repaired properly, and I should have checked that before this premiere. That's a bummer. But I'm not going to give her something that's not going to work. That's silly. Yeah, that's disappointing. Carol, you're stuck with your cam A, kiddo. You're going to have to find an alternative. So I'm going to go with Carol's cam C instead. And I'll show you the difference between I'll show you the difference between the two and why it's not seating on the cam stack that I repaired properly. And that's the problem with the Colormatic cams, is they had so many different flavors and varieties of them that even when you have the correct one for the machine, depending on your cam stack situation, it may not seat in there properly. So you can look at these two, if I turn the screen around, you can look at these two side by side, and you can see even the cam bases. The cam bases on these are dramatically different. Here on Carol's, you've got a 3-prong setting to snap it into that cam stack. On mine, and this is original, you've got a single prong to hold it into position. And as I was just experimenting, trying to get it to seat in there properly, it's not seating in her cam stack properly. And that may be in part because of the repair that I had to do, but more likely it's the fact that this particular cam A for a Colormatic Husqvarna model 2000 only has one set point on it instead of 3. And you'll notice that about the cams. Some of them have 1, some of them have 2, some of them have 3, some of them have, actually a couple of them have 4. So, at any rate, it is what it is. My cam A, I was hoping I would be able to give it to Carol and then she would have full use of the 2000, but it's not in the cards. It's not in the cards. So we'll do some stitches on her cam C instead of what I plan to do. So these are the stitches we're going to be focusing on right here. This Christmas tree one, kind of the racing roadway one, the red one. Then we have the sunburst, and then last but not least we have the floral one on the far right. So let's see what we can do as far as generating these. I should have enough material left, and we'll just move on. I got so excited I was going to give her that cam, and nope, not going to happen. I'll have to dig through my stuff a little bit more and see if I might have a cam A that matches her machine that has more mounting points to secure it on that cam stack. Okay, so I've got that flipped around. I'm going to put on just a little bit of music and get something to drink. And we'll move into cam C on Carol's model 2000. And this one is called Court of the Queen. No offense, Your Majesty, because we know it's the King's Court. All right, so now we're focusing on cam C. And the first stitch in cam C is in the green region, so I've got to move our stitch selector, which you can't see right now, but you've seen it enough. Move our stitch selector to the green region and make sure again your needle is clear of the material. There we go. And we're moving our stitch length to the green region as well. And our stitch width on the bottom is already set on the green region. So let's see what we get. Should get something resembling kind of a Christmas tree thingy. So let's see what we get. Here we go. Ha 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 ha! Well, that cam A didn't work out, but I did get it to stop with the needle in the up position. Yay! Alright, let's move right to the next stitch on cam C. So our next stitch is going to be a red stitch. So we're going to have to move our stitch selector to red. And again, our stitch width down on the bottom is going to stay exactly where it's at. So we're just going to concentrate on these two right here. So I'm going to go one click clockwise to get us red. And again, make sure needle is clear of the material. And we're close enough to the red-green on the stitch length over here. I'm going to leave that exactly the way it is. I might just tweak it a little bit to make it just a hair shorter. And then we're going to be aiming to get kind of that, what I'm calling kind of a roadway type stitch. I'll show you again. See that red one right there? We did the green one first, our Christmas tree. Now we're going to be doing the red one, then the sunburst, and then the floral one after that. So I'll have to make a couple more stitch color changes. Okay. So let's do this next stitch. And then I may just buzz through the last two without going over to the controls again, because you're really smart and you've already seen how I'm changing it in coloration, and it's simple, it's straightforward, so I think you got it, right? All right, here we go. And I missed it. I landed with the needle down, but oh well. What you gonna do, huh? What you gonna do? Okay, beautiful stitching. I don't know if you can see that in the camera shot. I'm looking over my shoulder. Yeah, you can see it. Okay, so that was our red stitch, this little guy right here. We kind of pull that material taut a little bit. You can see it more readily. There it is on top. I'm looking over my shoulder finally now. So you can see we did the Christmas tree one on the second row down, and then we just did the road raceway one, almost said road rage one, on the top. And now we're going to move over to our sunburst, which is our yellow one. And I'll make the adjustments on the stitch selector off camera and the stitch length so we can get that sunburst off of, again, we're on cam C right now on Carol's machine. So I'm going yellow, and yellow over here, and we should be good to go. Again, I didn't have to do anything with the stitch width because it's already set on that rainbow setting. So here goes our sunburst. Let's see how this one turns out. Here we go. Ooh, that's a pretty one. I'll show that one to you right away. That's really a pretty one. Let me just give these threads a quick clip. That's kind of a tricky one, though. You really have to manage that material when that's feeding through because it kind of jerks it forward because of the little spacer stitches that are part of that cam generated stitch. Can you see that one? There it is. So that's one we just did. I'll call it kind of the sunburst one. It's pretty, isn't it? I like that one a lot. It's really pretty. And we had our road rage one below. And then we had our Christmas tree one just below that. So we only have one more stitch on cam C that I can demonstrate, which is, I wish I could say I planned it based on the material space that I have left, but there you go. It just worked out perfectly. And this is going to be our blue stitch, which is going to give us kind of a floral type output. And for those of you that are real new to the channel and you may not be as familiar with the Model 2000, we'll come out on the shot and just show you again how easy it is to select this particular stitch. Again, this is the stitch that we're going to be doing right there, the blue one on the right. And we just did the sunburst, then we did the road rage, and then we did the Christmas tree. So, and we're already set down there on the stitch width, so I'm not even going to show that to you. So, this last one we're doing is the floral pattern, right? And it's blue, so we're going to change our stitch selector from yellow to blue. Again, make sure your needle is clear of the material. And our stitch length is already set on blue, so we're not going to do a darn thing with that. We're going to leave it exactly where it's at. So let me take you back down to the needle, and we will generate this final stitch on cam C. That should have kind of a floral type appearance to it. And that's about it, folks. That's all, folks. But I'm really glad Carol brought this machine in. I'm glad I was able to resolve everything, and the proof will be in the pudding if this final stitch even comes close to resembling a floral pattern. I'm joking, of course. It's gonna be like, I can't even tell the difference. A carbon copy. It's an identical match. I hope. All right, here we go. All right, launching in 3, 2, 1. I got so excited about that floral pattern, I almost like ran off the material there. Yeah, that's pretty. I could shorten that even just a little bit more, but that's pretty much spot on. That's pretty much spot on. Oh, and remind me, I got to show you the lock stitches too. So this is the one on the very top, and my screen is pointing the wrong way. This one on the top is the one we just did. Can you see that? Yeah, you can see that. Imagine that as far as a quilt accent, or that sunburst just below it. Absolutely gorgeous. And then below that we had our road rage. And our Christmas tree. And then from cam B, where we kind of started things, we had all of these different stitch outputs. I'm not going to name them because I probably wouldn't get the name right anyway. But those also turned out real lovely. Beautiful. And again, we're sewing on a material that is anything but forgiving when it comes to doing decorative stitches like this with this much needle swing. Because again, look at this stuff. Can I show you? It's rubbery. It's like sewing an inner tube. So to get outcomes like this with Carol's machine on cams B and C is really brag-worthy, because this is a real tricky material, very tricky material to use in generating stitches like that. Now, are we going to see anything shocking if we turn it over and look at the lock stitches? No, we won't. These are our lock stitches right here, and they are just as spectacular. I'm kind of going back and forth with them. Same thing on the original stitches we did from cam B. Absolutely beautiful stitches. So I'm extremely pleased with the final outcome of Carol's machine and how it is sewing now. The mere fact that it's sewing forward now and not just in reverse is certainly a milestone to be celebrated. And this model, again, from the late 1950s, early 1960s, really does give you a lot of versatility when you look at just these two cams B and C, that we were able to generate through Carol's machine. And again, I'm totally bummed that my cam A, with its single mounting point, is not going to be secure on her cam stack. It's gonna come loose. It's gonna create a lot of headache for her. So she's better off just sticking with her cam A. It's not going to match what's up on the screen here. It's not going to match those stitches. It's going to be different stitches than these, but it still should work for her, and she may be able to track down another cam A that does match these stitches properly and has more than one mounting point like the one that I have. So another success to celebrate with this fantastic Model 2000 that belongs to Carol Johnson from Wisconsin. And Carol, come and pick up your machine. Okay, it's ready. She's excited to go home. She's ready to go home now. Carol, can you hear me, Carol? Carol! So, and Carol has been real busy too, by the way. She works in healthcare and has been just running the race like a lot of our healthcare professionals. I know that they don't like to be called heroes because I happen to be a healthcare worker as well. As some of you may know, I have a background working in senior living with healthcare. And we do what we do because we love our residents. We love our patients. We love our customers, however you want to label them, not because we want to be heroes. But I certainly, with my recent challenges health-wise, am very grateful for the doctors and nurses and all the other great folks that touched my life and have helped me to at least begin down the path of getting back to normal again. And I need to emphasize something, because a lot of you, as you watch premieres like this, the last two premieres I did since my release from the hospital, are like, man, he's back, he's 100%. I'm not really 100%, folks. The hemoglobin is still real low. The oxygen level in my body is super diminished. Believe it or not, even doing these premieres, I get kind of wiped out a little bit. But I rally. I rally because of what I shared recently with one of my friends that's been kind of keeping tabs on me. And that is the same belief that Walt Disney had. And if you've never heard this story, it's absolutely true. When Walt Disney was first getting his feet on the ground and the parks were only in their very beginning stages, they were only in their infancy, Walt Disney would get involved with the interview process. Applicants would come in. It didn't matter whether they were going to be groundskeepers or dancers or singers or admin people or whatever it was. He would get involved with those interviews, and almost without without any missing a beat, at the end of each of those interviews that he was a part of, he would turn to that applicant and he would say, if we end up bringing you on board, if we end up hiring you, and you don't remember anything else about the things that we've covered during this interview process, remember these two words that you should be chanting in your head like a mantra. If you're brought on board, from the time that you enter the parking lot and are parking your car until the time that you leave the park at the end of the day and are getting back into that same car to head home after taking care of our customers, if you don't remember anything else, remember these two words: showtime. Because whether you're presenting on a channel like this on YouTube, or whether you had the privilege back in the day to work with Walt Disney in one of his parks, it's all about the deliverables to that customer. You're my customers and my friends. And when I step in front of the camera, I'm going to give you as close to 100% as I can possibly give you. It's probably a little bit less than that right now, but I'm going to do my darndest. So, as you watch these premieres, just remember it's going to be a long road of recovery for me to get that blood count back up, but I am going to be chanting those two words in my head. Showtime. God bless.